Good morning, vinyl community. I'm here to read out Poisoner in Chief. We're in a chapter called If Gottlieb is Found Guilty, It Would Be a Real First. This is part 2 about Frank Olson's murder. At Frank Olson's funeral, Gottlieb had told grieving relatives that if they ever had questions about what happened, it would be happy to answer them. More than 3 decades later, at the end of 1984, they decided to accept his offer and called to arrange an appointment. He told them they were welcome. When Alice and Eric and Niles Olson appeared at his door, his first reaction was relief. "I'm so happy you don't have a weapon," Gottlieb said. "I had a dream last night that you'd all arrived at this door and shoot me." Eric was taken back. "He didn't come here to harm you or anyone. We only want to talk to you and ask you a few questions about my father," he said. Later, he came to marvel at what he saw as Gottlieb's manipulation power. "Before we got through the door, we were apologizing to him and reassuring him," he said. "It was a brilliant and sophisticated way of turning the whole thing around." Inside, the encounter began with small talk. Margaret Gottlieb and Alice Olson discovered that their fathers had been done mission work in Asia and spoke briefly about their experiences. Then Margaret withdrew. Gottlieb invited his guest into the living room. He began telling them that what had happened at Deep Creek Lake on November 19th, 1953, Frank Olson and others were given LSD, he said, as part of an experiment to see what would happen to a scientist who were taken prisoner and drugged and would be divulged secret research and information. Then he began musing about Olson. "Your father and I were very much alike," he told Eric. "We both got into this because of patriotic feeling. We both went into a little too far, and then we did things that we probably shouldn't have not done. We were as close to a confession as Gottlieb ever came. He would not say what aspects of MK Ultra went a little too far, or what he had said Olson did that they probably should have not have done. Nor would he entertain questions about inconsistencies in the story of Olson's death. When Eric pressed him, he reacted sharply. There was a tauntness to him, Eric recalled. He was a kind of hyper-alert and intelligent, extremely intelligent. You would feel this right away. I was dealing with a world-class intelligence and a world-class shrewdness. You felt like you were playing cat and mouse, and he was way ahead of you. He had a way of discentering you. He had a charm that was extraordinary. You could almost fall in love with the guy. The thrust of what he did in the whole session was to say that Guy Gottlieb back there did some things that I'm ashamed of, but I am not him. I moved on. I left the agency. I went to India. I am teaching children with learning disabilities. And I am consciousness raising. I am not that guy. You say that you've been through a change of consciousness and now that you're a new Gottlieb, Eric told him. But you can't answer? What about the old Gottlieb? Is that we arrange a reunion and rethink the whole thing and where we are in our lives? Look, if you don't believe me, there's no reason for you to be here. Gottlieb told his visitors. There is no reason for me to tell you anything. I agreed to meet you to tell you what I know. As for the family was rising to leave, Gottlieb pulled Eric aside. You were obviously very troubled by your father's death. Your father's suicide, he said. However, you have ever considered getting into a therapy group for people whose parents have committed suicide? Eric did not follow that suggestion, but it left a deep impression on him. For years, he had been confused and depressed by the story of his father's death. Only after meeting Gottlieb, however, did he resolve to bring his research for truth to the center of his life. I didn't have the confidence then in my skepticism to ignore his ploys, but when he made their therapy group suggestion, that was the moment when he overplayed his hand. He said, at that moment, I understood how much Gottlieb had at stake in defusing me. And it was also at that moment that the determination to show that he had played a role in murdering my father was born. Eric Olson waited another decade till after his mother died before taking the next step, arranging to exhume his father's body. Several reporters stood near him as a backhoe clawed through the earth at the Linden Hills Cemetery in Frederick, Maryland on June 2nd, 1994. I don't know if you're going to find out what happened to my father, he told them, but I want to feel we did what we could do to find out. A forensic pathologist, James Starrs of George Washington University Law School, spent a month studying Olson's body. When he saw it was finished, he called a news conference. His tests for toxins in the body, he reported, had turned up nothing. The wound pattern, however, was curious. Starrs had found no glass shards in the victim's head or neck, as might be expected if he had dived through a window. More intriguingly, although Olson had reportedly landed on his back, the skull above his left eye was disfigured. I would venture to say that this hematoma is singular evidence of the possibility that Dr. Olson was struck a stunning blow in the head by some person or instrument prior to his exiting through the window of room 18A, 1018A. Starrs concluded. Later, he was more empathetic. I think Frank Olson was intentionally, deliberately, with malice after forethought, thrown out the window. Besides conducting the autopsy, Starrs interviewed people connected to the case. One was Gottlieb. The two men met on Sunday morning at Gottlieb's home in Virginia. Starrs later wrote that it was the most perplexing of all the interviews I concluded. Gottlieb's account of what he had done in the period before and after Olson's death was at least unsatisfactory and most incredible. My overall assessment of this interview was not at all favorable to Dr. Gottlieb or in his lack of complicity in Olson's death. Probably the most unsettling, even unnerving moment in my conversation with Dr. Gottlieb occurred close to close when he was spontaneously sought to enlighten me on a matter of which I might not take due notice. So he thought. He pointedly explained that in 1953 the Russian menace was quite palatable. The listening awestruck to him that I was gazed at a picture of South African Bishop Tutu on the wall. I was emboldened to ask how he could so recklessly and cavalierly have jeopardized the lives of so many of his own men by the Deep Creek Lodge experiments with LSD. Professor, he said, without mimicking a word, you just don't understand. I had the security of the country in my hands. He did not say more, nor did he have done so. Nor do I, dumbfounded, offer a rejoinder. The means ends message was predictably clear. Risking the lives of the unwilling victims of the Deep Creek experiment was simply the necessary means to a greater good, the protection of the national security. Because Olson survivors had signed away their rights to legal relief when they accepted their $750,000 compensation payment in 1975, they could not sue the CIA. Eric Olson worked closely, however, with prosecutors in New York who were investigating his father's death. In 1999, they persuaded the city's medical examiner to change the classification of Frank Olson's death from suicide to what detectives call CUPPI, cause unknown, pending police investigation. Despite their efforts, District Attorney Morgenthau ultimately concluded that he did not have enough evidence to seek criminal indictments in the Olson case and never presented it to the grand jury. This hardly allayed the family's suspicions. New tidbits kept emerging, none decisive, but each one adding to the weight of the circumstantial evidence. One of the most startling of the 8-page CIA manual called A Study of Assassination, written in 1903, the year Olson died, and declassified in 1997. It is unsigned, but a CIA officer who worked with MKUltra later identified Gottleib as its author. Some of its advice on ways to kill eerily fits the Olson case. The contrived accident is the most effective technique, the manual advises. Then successfully executed, it causes little excitement and is only casually investigated. The most efficient accident in simple assassination is a fall of 75 feet or more onto a hard surface. It will usually be necessary to stun or drug the subject before dropping him. Care is required to ensure that no wound or condition not attributable to the fall is discernible after death. A rock of heavy stick will do, and nothing resembling a weapon need be procured, carried, or subsequently disposed of. Blows should be directed to the temple. Although that and other discoveries sharpened Eric Olson's already powerful suspicion that foul play lay behind his father's death, he could not prove it. Recognizing that fateful fate, he and his brother decided that it was finally time to re-enter his father's body. On August 8, 2002, the day before the reburial, he called reporters to his home and announced that he had reached a new conclusion about what had happened to his father. We're going to end here, and we're going to continue on with what happened to his father on the next day. Probably take me a couple more days to read out this chapter. But Frank Olson is a very, very important American, murdered by the CIA. Never admitted to it. Paid him $75,000 and said, "Have a nice day." And have a nice day. If you think there's any truth here, please like and subscribe.